Hi, everybody. Who is responsible for quality in your company? That's a question that most managers of companies will answer well, like everybody's responsible for quality. But can you show me how everybody in the company is responsible for quality? It's not what you say when I ask you that question, it's what you show me with your actions that really matter. And when I go audit a company, I very rarely see evidence that a company is doing a lot about quality in multiple departments. A lot of times, the most obvious thing that shows up is who's in the meeting with the auditor. Is it just the quality department? Is it the same one or two or maybe three people that do all the interaction with the auditor during an internal audit or a certification audit? Or is it a really good cross section of all the departments in the company? If you don't even have time to show up for a meeting with the auditor, what are they supposed to conclude about your commitment to quality? And that's one of the most obvious ways that you show an auditor what your commitment to quality is. But what other things can you do to really show an auditor how you're committed to quality? And not just about auditing, but if you're doing a manager review, if you're the quality manager, how can you get the rest of the company involved in this? Because it's not just about auditing, it's everything you do day in, day out for the other, let's say, 360 days a year when you're not being audited. How are the other people in the company involved in quality? How do you show that? What evidence do you have? And if you feel overly burdened as a quality manager, like everything's your responsibility and nobody's helping, how can you change that? And first thing is it all starts with the top of the company. Whoever is the leader in the company, the most senior manager, they really set the tone for the company. So as the CEO, if you say quality is everybody's responsibility, but you don't actually ask any questions of any other managers and don't set any expectations for other managers to provide some evidence that they're doing something related to quality, and you don't ask them to help prepare slides for the manager review or help the quality manager prepare the manager review or ask them questions during the manager review, what message are you sending um, unofficially to everybody that, well, I really expect the management rep and the quality manager to do all this quality stuff because they're the only ones that are speaking during this manager review. They're the only ones I asked to prepare anything for it. I didn't ask anybody else to do it. You're unofficially sending that message that I expect them to do it. But when you ask other managers around the table from other departments to give you specific information and answer your questions and give them action items, you're sending a very clear message that I expect you to contribute to. One of the best ways of approaching quality, I think, is when you look at the quality manager or management representative as the champion of the quality system. They're supposed to teach other people, lead by example, show people how to do things, but not do it for them. If you're a department manager in production, you don't get out there on the production floor and do all the work for people. But when you hire a new employee, you do show them how to do it. You don't just say, read this procedure and go do it. You might actually say, well, let's start out with this is the procedure. And now I'll explain it to you. And now I'll show you. I'll do it myself. Now I'll ask you to do it. And I might even go so far as to see if you can teach somebody else how to do it, because when you have to explain it to somebody else, that really forces you to be able to articulate what you have to do, and you have to understand it at a much deeper level in order to explain and train somebody else. So I think of it as the levels of learning. When you're just reading and understanding, that's a very superficial level of knowledge. When you show somebody, that's the next level. When you actually have to do the task, that's a whole nother level of competency. But when you can teach others, that's the highest level of competency. That's when you really become the guru. So if you can get your employees to the level where they can teach other people, they really have mastered the material. So think about it. When you've got quality managers managing a manager review meeting, if they're the only ones talking, the only one preparing slides, and the only one that you're asking any questions to, you've asked only them to master quality. But when every single person at the table has to present slides, has to present metrics, has to do follow-up action items, and contributes ideas, then everybody on the company really has mastered that quality process. So let me give you a couple of examples. Number one, um, what is the quality policy for your company? So some companies, an auditor will go in and they'll just ask one or two people what the quality policy is. But an FDA inspector or an ISO certification auditor, they'll ask people on the production line. They'll ask quality inspectors. They'll ask other managers, not just the quality people, but other managers in other departments. Everybody in the company, no matter who you ask, should know what the quality policy is. That's a requirement. They should also be able to give you examples of how that quality policy is relevant to their job. So if you say one of our core principles is continuous improvement, that's something we're really committed to. Give me an example of how you've improved your process. Not the quality process, not some other department, but your process. Tell me how you've continuously improved that. When was the last time you made a change? Is it continuous improvement if you haven't changed anything in 5 years? Probably not. If you've changed it in the last 5 hours, absolutely. But there's a fine line between changing it all the time to the point where you don't build consistency and can't rely on it being a consistently uniform product and quality product, and having something that has never been changed and has become stagnant and isn't acceptable given the current state of the art. There's a difference between those two extremes. You don't want to never change things, but you don't want to change it constantly. You want repeatability and reproducibility. And when you make a change, it should be planned, thoroughly, validated, and then implemented. So it might take you months, but it shouldn't take you years. And I think that's a good way to think of it in time scale. Good changes to quality processes are in months, typically, not years. Next thing, objectives. When you look at the quality objectives, who are the quality objectives measured by? So when I first became a quality manager for the first time ever, the person that was my boss had been a quality manager before he became CEO. And he said, we're going to do a manager review every single week as our team meeting amongst all the managers of the company. So we took all the managers in our company, and it was a small company. We started, he was number 11, the CEO was. We took all the managers and we had a weekly team meeting, but he made it a manager review and he made us meet all the requirements. And he's told me, he's like, before you even schedule the first one, decide who is going to do each of the slides. He said, don't fall into the trap of doing it all yourself. Delegate responsibility to other people, peers, the other department managers. Give them something to say and do during the meeting so they don't just sit passively and listen. You want them engaged. So you can say, okay, now it's your turn, Joe. Now it's your turn, Sarah. And you let them present that slide, and you take the meeting minutes and let them do the talking about their part. And so they have some ownership. And that was one of the key things he impressed upon me. And he said, once we come up with a slide and we present the data a certain way, we want to repeat it that way each week. And if we're going to make a change, let's get agreement on how we're going to change it so we all know exactly what to expect next week for that new format. So whenever you make a change to what you're going to measure or how you're going to display the data, get agreement ahead of time, usually in the week before. So he would often say, next week, could you change the graph so it would be this way? And here's why I want it that way. And that makes sense. Maybe before you were measuring it monthly, and he's like, let's start measuring it weekly, or let's measure it every day. Or before we were measuring the average, now I want to know what the variability is, the highest and the lowest, and I want to see how much that goes up and down, not just the average that looks flat. So those are some key examples. He would ask us for different types of graphs. One person might have a pie chart, another person might have a line graph, somebody might have a run chart. He forced us to learn the different types of graphs. And when he was talking to somebody like the CFO of the company, who wasn't a quality engineer, she was a CPA, he would say, if you're not sure how to do this kind of graph, ask Rob and he'll show you how to do the graph. He might even be able to create a template for you so you just fill it in. An accountant has no trouble with a spreadsheet, but an accountant might not know how to do every single type of graph there is out there. Engineers tend to be really good at graphing things and doing modeling in spreadsheets. That's part of their degree. They're trained on that early on, and they do it constantly. But CPAs are really good at spreadsheets. They don't do all the types of graphs that engineers might do. They might do different types. They might be much more comfortable with a pie chart, but they might not be nearly as comfortable with a line chart. And they may not know how to do a process chart like an X bar R chart. So having the quality manager set up the template and showing them how to fill it in, and then having them do it for a couple of weeks can really help make sure that they feel comfortable updating it and they know what they're doing, and check up on them once in a while as the quality manager. But if you don't delegate the creation of those graphs to the other managers, they aren't contributing to those manager reviews. So that's quality objectives. Everybody at the table should have something to contribute, some graph they're presenting, and your job as the champion in the quality system is to show them how to graph it, show them how to improve their graphs, show them ways to get more data and explain it more clearly to the team. So being able to use visual presentations and graphs and present data is a key function of the quality manager, but you don't have to do all the creating of the graphs in the slides. You can teach others how to do it, and once they get started, they should be able to maintain it. Another thing you might do is you might rotate the responsibilities, because sometimes people go on vacations, but you don't want to reschedule things. So while this person's out, could you fill in for them and track their data? So when they come back to work, they don't have to catch up. It's already done for them because you covered for them while they were gone. And I don't mean you as the quality manager. I mean, pick a different department. So maybe the purchasing guy filled in for the operations woman and did their graph for them. So when they came back, it was currently up to date. And then they swap. When the purchasing person goes on vacation, the operations person covers for them. Have them work in teams, and they learn each other's graphs, and they help one another. That's a really good characteristic. It builds team camaraderie from your management team. This is another point, and it's really important. How do you communicate throughout the company? So there's not only how each department manager communicates, but then there's how top management communicates to the entire company. So do you have weekly meetings for the company, or do you have monthly meetings, or do you have annual meetings? Bigger companies tend to have maybe a virtual meeting, but do you invite everybody in the company? Do you stop everything, say, we're going to have a town hall meeting and everybody's invited and we're going to see the CEO speak? And is it interactive? Do they accept questions, or do they just talk down to you? That's not what we want. We want interactive dialogue, questions. People feel comfortable asking questions and maybe even being critical and saying, I really don't like this. I wish we had improved this. Here's some suggestions. Is the CEO okay with that kind of feedback from people? Or are they not encouraging feedback from the rest of the company? That really tells you a lot. And the frequency that they ask for that matters. And it doesn't always have to be the same thing. You could have 12 different meetings, a different meeting every month, but it doesn't always have to be the same thing. You can talk about different things at different times. And there might be certain things at certain times of the year that make a lot of sense to discuss because of the seasonality of business. You might also want to think about how you're proactively going out there and soliciting that feedback from people. you might actually call on a department manager. Is there anybody from your department that has some feedback for us on this? That might be an example. Is there anybody in your, like, it might be the service department. We have been seeing a lot of returns to our service department. Is there anybody in the service department that might be able to give us some idea of what the problems are, or be able to summarize them for us? That's a great way to get engagement in those town hall kind of meetings. Um, when when I was in one of the companies, I wasn't even the quality person, but we had a serious quality problem. We had a very big customer that was concerned about a quality issue, and they were about to implement a recall. Everybody pointed to me and said, "Well, what's going on out there? What's the problem? Tell us what's up." And I'm like, I think I know what the answer is, but why don't we actually have the inspector that's on the production line come and tell us firsthand, instead of me giving it to you filtered? Let's have the person that has 10 times a year as I do, because they've been here for 20 years. I've been there for less than 2. Let's have them come in here and explain to us, and I'll ask them to actually bring an example of the unit that we're building and show us. See that what I've done there? I've gone from me telling you, me showing you, to now I've got somebody on the production floor coming in here, and they have to show not only that they understand it, but they have to be able to explain it to all you. That engages that employee, and it shows they have a real mastery of what's going on with the quality of that product. And I had confidence in them because I had already done that before management even knew about the problem. We already knew what the problem was. We knew it was coming. We were prepared for it. We knew how to prevent the problem. Management needed somebody from the production floor that was intimately detailed in that process to bring an example and show them how it happens, and show them firsthand, not second, third, fourth hand. I don't need to generate a report. I need to do a demonstration for you. Whenever time I say, give me a demonstration, the phrase that goes through my head for my first business partner I ever had, he had a boss. It was a German boss, and he always used to imitate the accent. I won't do that for you. But he said, you've heard the phrase, a picture says 1,000 words, but a demonstration is 1,000 pictures. And I like to think of it in video because I do so much video work. A video is 1,000 pictures easily, because 60 frames per minute or 30 frames per minute, per second, I mean, you get tons and tons of pictures make up a video. So videos and demonstrations are at least 1,000 pictures, if not thousands of pictures. And so you're getting so much more information than you could ever put in a report. Just cut through all the blah, 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 or the pages and tomes of stuff that nobody ever reads, and just give me a demo. Show me what the problem is firsthand. You're the expert. You're the production line person. Show me what the problem is. And then the last thing on the manager reviews, figure out how to engage the rest of the team. One of the best ways I like, if almost every company I run into, they don't have any preventive actions, or they have things they call preventive actions, but they're really corrective actions. You need to have pure preventive actions to satisfy your ISO auditors during a 1345 audit. Well, if you're having trouble coming up with preventive actions, just say to the manager team, next manager review, I want at least one. It's okay to over deliver and deliver 2 or 3, but at least one preventive action idea from everybody in the room, and I want to slide on it. Now I'm saying, not only do I need you to spitball an idea, but I'm making you prep ahead. I want to slide. I want each person to present their preventive action. So we're going to go around the table. We're going to present our quality metrics, and then you're going to present your idea for a preventive action. That raises the bar so much. Now, if I have some of these quality meetings, I've seen people have a manager with 20 people at the table. First of all, that's too many. You can't have an efficient meeting with 20 people talking at the table. But if you have that many people presenting in a management review, and each one presents an idea for a preventive action, you got 20 ideas for preventive actions. As the quality manager, I'm going to say my first preventive action is, let's have fewer people at these meetings. The meetings will be more efficient. But you can come up with all kinds of ideas as a manager of your department for preventive actions. If everyone presents their own, we'll have a lot of great things to work with, and we can pick the best ones to implement for this quarter. So that's another thing you might do. Another way I can tell whether the company has a really engaged management team in quality, I look at other processes where quality is involved heavily. One of those is training. So if I see everybody's just read this procedure, sign and date it, that's not really engaged. When I see people are taking quizzes, then I look for how many people have completed the quizzes on time. How are the grades on the quizzes? Is the manager of the department making up their own quizzes, or are they asking the quality department to provide that? Or worse, HR, of all the things that HR is doing, writing a quiz is the last thing HR ought to be doing. If it's your procedure in your department, you should write the quiz, you should be doing the training. Or if you suck at training, you should have somebody else responsible for that. So you decide who is the best person to do the training, but don't delegate it to somebody just because they're in quality department or just because they're in HR. You should own the training and really be invested in that. If it's training for your department or your procedure, own that and do it well. Risk management. Risk management is supposed to be multidisciplinary. So how can you possibly have the quality department create the risk management documents? Well, they're better trained on 14971. They'll do it right. We won't do it right. So let's delegate it to them. That just means you don't want to work on it. You're lazy. So that tells me a whole lot. Your company is lazy, number one, and nobody knows 14971 because they haven't taken the time to learn it. And so we're going to delegate it to the one person that has taken the time to do it. And they have a whole lot of other things on their plate. No. It should be everybody in the department, everybody that's in that design team or risk management team is involved, is trained on 14971, is demonstrated competency, and the quality person is showing you how to get better, not doing it for you. That's totally different. Number 3, design. Design history file is not for the quality department to create. If anything, the ownership of it is the design team lead. And I don't know too many companies that have the quality manager is in charge of the design team. It's usually a development engineer or a product manager. So they should own the design process. They should be an expert in the design process. They should know that design controls procedure inside out, upside down, and backwards. And they might even have suggestions for the quality department on how they can streamline the process to make it more efficient. That's what I expect. It's a cross-disciplinary team. You want the quality manager to be your independent reviewer, not your design team lead. So that's another way I can see that you're really getting everybody in the company involved in the quality of design. CAPA boards. Most of the companies out there don't even have a CAPA board. And if they do have a CAPA board meeting, it's who's responsible for that mistake. Let's blame somebody. That's not the purpose of a CAPA board. The CAPA board is, hey, I need help. I'm behind on this CAPA. I need more resources. I don't have them. We're backlogged. We're really doing this important thing for whatever, but we can't let this CAPA go. Can somebody help me? We're having a problem. We can't overcome it. Please help us. It's to ask for help, suggest ways to expedite things so the CAPAs get done on time and get done effectively. If you're not a statistics expert and you're trying to do a statistical analysis to support effectiveness of CAPA, get somebody from another department that does know statistics. Maybe they can help you. So a CAPA board is supposed to be where you get help and you expedite things and you can add resources. You don't necessarily need top management. Maybe the middle level department managers can do it amongst themselves, but it's not a blame game. It's a how can we help the CAPAs that are behind schedule and get them back on schedule. That's what the purpose of a CAPA board is. It's another way I see quality demonstrated by different departments. But quality is a team sport. It's all about team. How does the team interact? How do they cooperate? How do they help one another? How do they coach one another? How do they cover for one another when people go on vacation or they get sick or they have a marriage or engagement or a bar mitzvah or whatever it is? How do we know that you're working as a team? You show us examples. And I don't see that in a lot of companies. So that's what we're looking for. Now, I have a couple other things that I thought of. I was looking at we have a requirement for monitoring and measuring of the quality system. And then we have requirements for statistical analysis. Monitoring and measuring of the quality system is required in 8.2.5. That's for processes. 8.2.6 for product, and then we have 8.4 for the data analysis. Well, the FDA has a different clause that's for statistical techniques. That's in 820.250. And if you look at where statistics is required, it's required for the CAPA process, service, process. The statistical techniques would apply to process capability, like verification, validation, incoming inspection. But then if you look at the ISO side for data analysis, they say you need data analysis for feedback, conformity of product, processes, suppliers, audits, and service. So there's lots of places we're supposed to be measuring quality. We're supposed to have quality metrics, and I just don't see it. Or if I see it, it's just the quality department creating it instead of each individual department creating it. And that's not right. You really need everybody engaged in measuring of their own processes and showing graphs and showing whether they're effective or not. And you should be soliciting that feedback. Now, let's take the tough ones. Software as a medical device, SAMD. How do you show a company like that? How do they measure processes and measure product? Well, they're like, I can't measure product because this is software. There's nothing physical to measure. Garbage. That's absolute garbage. There's so much you can measure in a software process. I'll give you a few examples. So, qualitative feedback from customers. When you do agile development of software and you do sprints, you do lean product development, you go out and you ask for customer feedback. It can be qualitative feedback, it can be semi-qualitative feedback, it can be quantitative feedback. You can have them vote on a visual analog scale. It can be 0 to 10, 0 to 5. We choose 0 because everybody knows 0 is bad. That's not a good score. 1, we might think it's the number 1 ranking, but 1 is usually a poor score. So make it clear, 0 to 5, whatever your scale is, use a qualitative or quantitative scale for people to give you feedback on your software development, the quality of your product, that function, the usability of it. Another thing, the speed of your sprints when you do agile process development. How fast are your sprints? What is the velocity of those? We can measure that. We can graph that. We can show a continuous improvement of that. We can figure out, well, this feature that we're trying to develop needs less or more than the other. So let's redelegate, let's like move our resources over here to accelerate the development of this feature because this other feature doesn't need it right now. We really are having problems with this feature and not with the other. So let's reallocate our resources to the velocity of development of this feature that is the problem. That's another example. Coding errors. Quantify your coding errors. Categorize them. So we have maybe reason codes. This is this type of error. This is that type of error. Come up with the best practices and most common mistakes for coding errors. And maybe do a group training for your developers and coders. Say, these are the most common types of problems we see with Python or C++ or whatever it is, whatever code language you're using. Tell them what the most common errors are and have them learn. This is the best practice for avoiding that. Do a short little courses, not long, drawn out, boring courses that take days and you have to go off site. Short little mini sessions that help them avoid mistakes. Hey, we saw this problem in a code. We caught it as a bug. We fixed it, but the root cause was this. So this is a best practice to avoid this mistake. And it happens all the time. Don't single somebody out. Just like, this is a way, this is best practice that we can all learn from to try to avoid this mistake. That's very common. So we don't have to catch it in a code review. What is the lead time for launching a product? Do we slip on that schedule as we plan? Here's another example. What is the load time of your software? Whenever your software boots up, how long does it take to execute that code? You could measure that. So that's something you could measure in milliseconds. Tech support. How many calls do we get from the tech support asking about things? And for what features of the product do we get the questions about? What are the most common frequently asked questions in tech support? And do we have really good knowledge base that they can refer to in tech support to answer the customer's information? And how do we provide that knowledge base to our customers? Can they self-serve all that knowledge, or do they have to call our 800 number and wait on hold? Not good. Do we have configuration errors in our product? Is there some way we can configure the product more in a more user-friendly way, or make it easier to configure the product for the customer's needs? How long does it take to configure the software and validate the software? The amount of time and effort it takes to validate. How much does the validation report weigh if you actually printed it out? But you could go by the number of pages it is. How thick is that validation, making it more streamlined documentation and less labor intensive? How many hours did it take you to create the validation documentation? How many use errors do we see? So you're actually supposed to have separately in your risk analysis, you're supposed to be gathering data on bugs, but then you have use errors. One is going to be a risk analysis of your design of your software. The other one is a use-related risk analysis, or URRA, of the use of your software. And you're supposed to be proactively going out there and gathering data post-market on use errors. How often do people make these use errors, and verify that your summative testing, your formative testing really is good as you thought it was when you convert things to the real world. And when you go to a bigger user population and a broader number of companies and environments with more operating systems and more hardware and more people with different levels of skill and training, you're going to see different use errors. So it's really important to verify that everything you learned in your summative testing, in your formative testing for usability, reflects real world when you go out there and gather real-time data on use errors. So that's a requirement and expectation both of ISO and the FDA. And then we have bugs. Just how many bugs do we have? How long does it take us to fix the bugs? That's another metric. Think of all those metrics I just listed. They're all related to software development, but there's nothing physical, but we had no trouble measuring things. So when you have automated data coming out of software, it's really easy to measure things. So this is something you really should be looking at, is how are we measuring the software process, the software product, the software experience. There's lots of ways to measure that. I think I have one more set of slides here. Nope, I didn't have another set of slides. So in summary, the big thing here is we want to make sure that companies that are developing products and services and software, they are all focused on quality throughout the entire company. And it starts at the very top of the company, and you want to delegate it throughout all the different departments, and everybody has a role, everybody's engaged, and you do this frequently. Now, we have some comments. Somebody put in a question here. I'll answer that. Please tell me, as per MDR 2017-745, so this is the European MDR, required SOPs so that we can fulfill the gap between the MDD and the MDR. So I'm not clear whether this person wants to know all the SOPs that are required for the MDR or just the one that's specific to what we're talking about today. In general, all the requirements for a quality system for standard operating procedures are covered in the MDR in Article 10. If you look in Article 10, it has a bulleted list of what the requirements are. And in general, the way companies usually meet that requirement is they get ISO 13485 certified. It's not required that they do that. A notified body auditor could audit your quality system to the MDR in that Annex 10, and they could go point by point and show how you demonstrate each thing. But normally what happens in an MDR quality system audit, they're auditing you to ISO 13485, and they're going to give you an ISO 13485 certificate in addition to your CE marking certificate. And it would be typically issued by a European notified body, such as, let's say, BSI, and it might be the accreditation body for the Dutch accreditation. I forget what they're called. I think it's RVA or something. But it used to be a UCAS certificate for BSI because they were British. Now they're Dutch, so it would be a Dutch accreditation body giving you that ISO 13485 certificate. But the requirement to have a procedure specific to monitoring and measuring is found in clause 8.2.5. And then for product, it's for 8.2.6. And then for data analysis, it's 8.4. So typically what we do, it's SYS 17, which is monitoring measurement of processes. And we're combining the requirement in 8.2.5 with the requirement in 8.4. And we have them both in one procedure. And if you're wondering what other procedures are required in 1345, you just search for the word or the phrase, the organization is required to establish a procedure or shall establish a procedure. That phrase, organization shall establish a procedure, is what you're looking for. And there are 28 different places it appears. And there's actually a place on our website where we actually tell you here are all the required procedures. If you look at our ISO 1345 certification webinar, we actually give you a slide that lists all 28 of them right there. But that's how you know what procedures are required. In MDR, what's different from ISO 1345 for the MDR? Well, number one, you need something for the technical file. In the ISO standard, it looks for, do you have medical device files? Well, the medical device file for Europe is a technical file. For the US, it's a design history file. But there are similar requirements, and you could actually have the other thing for the US would be your medical device report. I'm sorry, the MDR, yeah, medical device report. I'm sorry, device master report, DMR, is what it would be, the technical file equipment. So usually a technical file index and a DMR index are very similar, and we actually use the same template for both. So that's one of the requirements, is a tech file procedure, and it could be also your DMR procedure. There would be some forms associated with that, like an essential requirements checklist, which is now the GSPR checklist. You'd have a declaration of conformity requirement. You'd have other things like post-market requirements in Annex 3. So the requirements there, you would have a post-market surveillance procedure. That's SYS 19 for us. You would have within that post-market, you'd have post-market planning, post-market reports, post-market clinical follow-up, post-market clinical follow-up plan. You would also have a clinical evaluation report requirement, CERs. So that's procedure 41 for us. Another one is vigilance. You have to have a vigilance procedure. So those are usually the key procedures that are different for the MDR. It's tech file, post-market surveillance, clinical evaluation, and vigilance. Those are the big ones. There might be other procedures that you have to modify to meet the European requirements, like risk management. There's some deviations, like you have to do benefit risk analysis. You can't just follow the 14971 procedure or standard. You have to do benefit risk analysis no matter what for all risks and the overall residual risk. So those are some examples of differences, but it's just those four different procedures that are additional above and beyond 1345. I'll read them one more time. It's technical file, CER, post-market surveillance, and vigilance. So those four. And I think that answers our question. But if you have anything more for me, you can certainly email me. And that should cover all our requirements for today about this topic and the question that was asked. I hope that was helpful to everybody, and have a great day. See you next week.